Hey, everybody. This is Angela here, and my friend Charlotta and I wanted to have a conversation. Um, Today, we're going to talk about the topic of balance. And for me, I think the reason we wanted to do this is because we are continuously having a contemplation in conversation with each other, reflecting back to each other, examining things that come up in our lives or processes or beliefs or situations or whatever. And I know for me, and I don't think we've ever really, maybe we've talked about this a little bit, Charlotta, but the whole the way that we communicate with each other, like I think it's important for other women to see what's possible to deepen communication. And I think that's what we naturally do. We're always challenging each other, looking at different perspectives, having an open dialogue. We don't have to agree on everything or playing devil's advocate, or it's really taking that inner awareness and reflectiveness and contemplative nature that we both naturally do, and then taking that to the level of how we are in relation to each other. And I know for me, I think, is everyone not doing this? Are other people sitting around and having this level of conversation? And I don't know, honestly, maybe, but I don't.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
that's what.
think a lot of people are sitting around gossiping or finding what's wrong with the world outside of themselves. I think that you and I are both extremely introspective and we give each other space to express what we're thinking about and then give positive feedback. I mean, even if it's not positive, like honest feedback.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
agree completely. And so this is a fun practice for us because normally when we're doing this, it's, on the Telegram or on the phone and not in this video format. So I'm
Right.
proud of us because we're challenging ourselves to do this in a more, open way so that, um, you know, just because it's a just because we want to,
It's for
and
growth for everyone, growth for
exactly.
ourselves, growth for anyone that might see it. Maybe maybe we can be so funny that other people feel better about being funny too. Funny, weird. I don't know.
Funny, weird, strange. Yeah, I mean,
It's awkward.
it's awkward. It's awkward. Um, yeah, it is. So, so basically, we put a bunch of topics in a hat, and today we pulled out the topic of balance. And I think it's a fun topic because it's kind of you know, a self-help topic that everyone's always trying to achieve, or at least for me, being a Libra, I naturally have throughout my life tried to reach some level of balance, although that has drastically changed the older I get. So I think it's a fun topic to play with. Um, it's like, what exactly are we trying to balance?
Well, it's everything. That's the thing. Like the conversation can always go back to balance.
Mm-hmm.
It's especially when you start feeling really strongly in one way, it's important to actually go explore the other way and find that in between, at least for me, because I find peace in the middle. And it doesn't have to be, this is something I've struggled with. Does that make me apathetic? Is neutral apathetic? And sometimes I feel like it can be, or it can come across that way. Like I don't have a strong opinion because I can see both sides and I find myself kind of like, well, yeah, that's there, and here I am. So, I mean, it's fun to have extremes and play with it, but at the end of the day, to have that peace for myself, I have to find the middle ground.
I think sometimes the extremes are the balance. Like, for example, I hurt my knee and I went into a period of, and I kind of look at this like in seasons, like in seasons of life seasons. So my whole life, super active, super, physical person. And then I hurt my knee in 2019. And it was like my body was like, you need to take a break. Right. So I kind of went from one extreme to another extreme, but both were in balance in that moment, ultimately to get me to more of an equilibrium point at the end of it, which I'm kind of moving into now, because I was so one or the, so one way. It's like my body naturally took me to the other extreme in order to swing the pendulum back into a more harmonious way. Like for me, I think harmony is a more appropriate thing of what explanation of what I strive for now versus the word balance. Because balance to me feels like, I always think of people on those slack lines, or like, I don't know, where you're kind of like, ooh, and it's,
Yeah.
it feels, trying to balance feels unsteady, uncentered, but flowing in harmony feels like the positive of that, whereas balance almost feels like the opposing force in a
It
way.
is. It's because balance is one way or the other, whereas harmony is many things coming into a central point. And to be harmonious, it's you're taking in all of these different outputs and you're creating a hopefully pleasant sound. It's recalibrating everything around you into a way that is pleasing. That's how I see it. But yeah, I get what you mean about the balance, one side or the other, and the tightrope or yeah. I like that.
Yeah, it's like, I guess like the other way to look at that instead of a tightrope is I think about people who like sit on one of those balls when they work. You know what I mean? And it's you're kind of unstable, but the more you do it, the stronger your core is, even in the face of that like unsteadiness, it becomes easier. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure what the lesson is there, but I feel like there's a lesson in that. It's like maybe the
Get
stronger.
one of those balls.
What?
The lesson is get one of those balls.
Get one of those
I
balls.
love those things.
Um, well, I think it's like the stronger you are in your center, the more balanced you are naturally, maybe,
Yeah.
because you're less likely to be triggered into certain extremes because you know who you are, you're steady in your core. And that, obviously the ball represents like the physical representation of that, but there's the emotional, mental, spiritual aspect of that it requires that same strength in order to find some level of synchronicity between those aspects of self and bring those into balance.
Yeah. So to find that inner strength, you need to wobble. There's the wobbling so that you can use that muscle and find that core. And the more you wobble, the more you work out. So I guess this would be a great example of why it's important to go do challenging things, exercise. I mean, not, physically, mentally, spiritually. Play with it.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. And be okay during times of feeling out of balance, knowing that it's showing you something to pull you back in. Because
Right.
I certainly feel that.
Well, I mean, like your knee, for example, when that happened, you could have just crawled into bed and you may have done this, for a few days or whatever, and cried and said, "Oh my God, this ability's been taken from me." But to find the harmony in that is to find the lesson or find the exercise that's there to get back up on the ball and recalibrate. And you're going to have to sort of, like you said, you had to rest. And so you probably found other ways to exercise yourself. And again, not just physically, but so you got to work on mental aspects instead of your body or whatever it is. And it's it's constant.
Yeah,
But
I definitely agree with that. And I think when we give ourselves permission to move with the seasons of nature, the seasons of life, that we, stop trying to achieve balance so much and start moving in more of a deeper just understanding that this is a season. I guess, we can have times where we perpetuate unhealthy seasons by not making the right choices to move us out of those times. But even still, like if you're feeling stuck, eventually the needle is going to move again. Eventually the needle is going to move, even if you do nothing, even if you are completely unaware that you're in a season.
yeah, the stuck thing, I mean, usually for me, when I get stuck, it's like I have to make myself or allow myself to be so miserable that I do not have any other choice but to do something, anything different than whatever that was. And yeah, so and then to even be able to look back and go, wow, I was stuck and what was holding me back. And usually you'll figure out what was holding you back whenever you have moved forward and you find like what brings you so much joy. It's like, oh my God, why haven't I been doing this? What have I been afraid of? But it's like you have to be, or for myself, I have to be so uncomfortable that I just propel myself into something else, anything else. But and accepting that, like you're saying, as one of the seasons. Okay, well, it was winter, I was resting. But sometimes it's like, all right, I've been resting for about 7 years now. It's time to rock the boat.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's an aspect of, I think that's natural for everyone. Even the most so-called balanced people or disciplined people or whatever, even in that, there's usually a needle that needs to move where some life event will happen that will propel you. So I think that's very natural for people. But also I think when we put ourselves out of our comfort zone, it's like we get ahead of life making us uncomfortable in order to change. And then it's like us taking the reins and saying, you know what, I'm going to make myself uncomfortable so that I can elicit this sooner than waiting.
Yep. And so here we are
And so here we
doing this. Yeah. I mean, it's pushing forth, choosing the challenge,
Choo-
actually saying, okay, I want to be uncomfortable today. What am
Yeah.
I going to?
And I love that. And I feel like I've done that my whole life in some areas, and in the physical area, I used to do that, pushing myself to try new sports or things that I was afraid of, like jumping out of a plane. It's like, but I was almost like, when I look back now, I can see that I was doing that physically, but I was not doing that, spiritually, for example. I wasn't like exploring the breadth of like what's possible or how I can deepen that connection. And of course, I reached a pivotal point where then that became an exploration. I think we go through phases where each aspect of our being, we are being asked to do that, to meet a challenge. And we either do it or we stay in complacency. And not that that's bad, but for me, that's not what I want for myself, and I always think about
Right.
regret. I always think of like my future self looking back. What would I regret? I would regret not doing this today. So I'm glad we're doing this today, right? Like it's taking those chances in life, even if it's uncomfortable or even if it fails or even if it whatever, there's always reward in those moments, I think.
Definitely. I was this morning, for example, I had tried to hire someone to do the job of just cutting out the sod of a 12 by 12 square. And it was, for whatever reason, there's no shade there. It's, the ground is tough. And I mean, I've been putting it off for days. And then it was like, why am I doing this? Like, and then I have to envision what it is I want. And then just do it. But the process, the mental process of just getting into that motion, it's so I like what you say about, looking or listening to your future self, because I think tools like that um help with movement. I'm trying to think of what else there could be to help accelerate movement. What do we need to, when we know we're stuck, or we know that something needs to give and yet we just can't quite get there? What are some ways to sort of snap you into it? For me, it's like, it's freaking hot out here, I want a little pool here. I need some water. So with that example, but
Yeah, it's like the vision is the motivator. And I think there are times where it's like makes sense to hire someone to do something. It's like, and then and this is part of that balance, is knowing when. And then there are times where it's like, no, I have to do this myself. I have to put in the sweat equity. And it's like, wow, that felt so good. Now you've created this thing. But then there are other times where we do need to hire someone. And I think it's like not letting ourselves get overwhelmed. It's like
mhm.
knowing when this is a priority or not a priority in my life,
Or taking it just the one little step at a time, because eventually I'll need a deck built, and I watched a video on how to build a deck and I thought I could totally do that. It would take, there's a learning curve. I know how to use the saw. Um, and will I be ready to do that? Probably not, because I'm going to want my deck faster than I could do it. But then that made me look back at the steps that I could do. It's like, I don't need to hire somebody for this. I mean, and it ends up being a great workout and feels wonderful. And I feel like I am invested in this project now. And but yeah, you mentioned vision. That's like my prime motivator, is to have this picture in my mind of where it is that I want to go, what it is I want to have, and then just working the path step by step to get to that vision. What about people that don't visualize? Because there are some that don't, apparently.
Well, I think even if you can't create a picture in your mind, you can create a list, or an experience or a feeling or something.
Mm-hmm.
I want to feel, when I kick my feet up on the whatever, whatever that person's dream is. But I think what happens is, at least I recognize this at some point in life, is you create the vision and then it seems too far ahead. So it feels overwhelming or daunting. And then you do nothing. You freeze. And I think people forget the value in the little steps. So it's like, okay, I've got this vision for my deck. That's the big goal. But what is the little goal? What is the first goal that you could do? Buy the wood. The second goal, set reachable parameters so that it's not like, oh my God, I have to, get this all done, because those little goals are what motivates or inspires the next action to me. It's like, I see that in myself when I procrastinate on something, and then kind of like what you were saying earlier, and then I finally do it and I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I just do this? Like, what the heck is wrong with me?
Yep. So true. I'm so guilty of that. And every time you would think I would learn, it's like, why don't I get this? So I have to question, like, what is holding me back? Is it fear of your own power? I mean, is it that if you really did what you could do, you would burn yourself out? Because sometimes it just seems like I know better. I know better. I know that just one little thing at a time and I'm going to get there. I know it's actually easy. But sometimes I just prefer to not. I don't know why that is. It's interesting.
I think it's because we don't feel inspired. Like, there's like a disconnect between the goal and the moment. You know what I mean? It's like, if we do what we want to do every day, really. But then there are these things, these blocks, these, points of contention or challenge that are like little roadblocks, and I don't know. To me, it's about finding the inspiration in the thing. And that again comes back to like looking at it from the future to the now. You always feel so good when you just do it. It's like when I opened the pool and the water was cold and I really wanted to get in. And you can dip a toe and you can slowly get in and it's freezing and you can breathe and you can inch your way little by little, or you can just jump. You can jump in and then you're like, oh my God, that feels so good. And then once you train your body for that, it's like, then you always want to jump. You're like, or I'm trying to do that to myself. I'm like, just jump, just jump, just jump. It's going to feel, and I think to myself how it's going to feel. It's going to feel good. And then once I have that feeling, right, I'm not scared to jump. So it's like, okay, tapping into that emotion of what you want to feel leads to the inspiration. And then you feel like doing the thing. Like if, like thinking about how good I feel if I go for a walk. Well, if I think about, I got to get up, I got to put on an outfit. I'm probably going to run into my neighbor. Got to make sure I look decent. Got to put, got to get, if I think about all of that, then it's like I think of every possible reason not to do something. But if I think I'm going to feel so good when I do this, and it is so nice outside, and if I think about how I'm going to feel by doing it, then I'm like, okay, just go. Just okay.
Yeah. And I think it's not about thinking how you feel. It's like actually getting into that feeling moment. And then it's like, screw all the rest. Yeah. Like, what do I care? Like, I want to feel this way.
Exactly.
So you're on your way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, like we can achieve more when we set ourselves up for success. Like, and I mean, I'm just throwing out a random thing, but it's like, for example, if I know I want to go for a walk in the morning, but there's dishes I need to wash. If I don't take 10 minutes and wash the dishes, then I'm going to have to do them in the morning. Then that's going to delay my walk. Then I'm probably not going to go on my walk. I mean, then this is just a very simple, silly kind of example, but if I go ahead and make myself do the hard thing first, then I'm more likely to do the thing that I really want to do that's going to make me feel more in balance, better, more energy, more inspired.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's like creating life in a way that we get those things out of the way that are the responsibilities of life in order to do the things that we want to do, that we need to do, that bring nourishment and value and energy and enhance our well-being, rather than the reverse, which then becomes an excuse.
Right. Yeah. And something that I find myself working on too. I mean, the dishes are a great example. I mean, it's such a boring thing and it's such a task, but I've really been working on, it's loading the dishwasher. I'm not even hand washing, but I work on like finding the fun and the methodical aspect of it. It's like, oh, I get to arrange my color dishes in a certain way. It's probably totally ADD thing, but it's how I find pleasure in that moment of something that would ordinarily be like, just drudgery. Yeah. So to be able to sink into the jobs you don't want to do and be like, well, why don't I want to do this? And how can I like this as I'm doing it? Of course, the aim or the greatest goal would be to find a way to do that with everything you do, rather than looking at this outcome that you want, know the outcome you want, and just feel your way peacefully to it. I don't know. Making it up as I go along.
No, I mean, I think that's beautiful, because there's so much more to just washing dishes than washing dishes, right? Like you're clearing the energy of the plate that you feed yourself with. I mean, like literally, I think if we can be aware of what we're doing, because I think what happens in those times where like, I just got to get this done, and we lose that self-awareness, whereas those are opportunities to recalibrate our mind in a sense and think about why I'm doing what I'm doing, instead of either just rushing through or ruminating or thinking this task isn't important, it's not contributing to my life in some way, it's just a thing I have to get done to get to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, I don't want to do that, but how can I make this? I mean, I like what you said. It's like, how can I make this something that's, if I can look forward to doing that, then it kind of frees me in a sense.
I like what you said about cleaning the energy of the dish, because that brings me to the joy that I find in cleaning stuff up. Anything, or arranging, organizing, all of these things that seem sort of monotonous, when you literally in the moment see yourself moving energy and understanding that you are clearing and cleaning, and not just the dirty dish, but the whole flow of the kitchen. And that's how I feel. So much to the point where I can't not have a clean flowing kitchen, right? But I love the idea of you are moving energy for your well-being. There's some way to say that better, but it's pretty simple. I think you're frozen.
Yeah, you're frozen. I think it's gonna work itself out here in a minute. I can hear you. Can you hear me? There you are.
There you are. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's it gives us those to me, those are really good times to reflect. Because you're doing this mundane thing. You don't have to think about doing it. It's just like you don't have to think about breathing. You're like, I know how to do this. I've done this a million times. So how can I utilize this as a chance to reflect? Or to me, those are really good times to do like a gratitude practice. Like, I am so grateful for this food, or that I have a plate, just like to really like humble myself to the beauty in having this moment, this opportunity to clean a dish, that I was able to eat food on, that I wasn't, that those needs are all met, and just really find that appreciation in that space. And this is going to sound really, really silly, but I was thinking about this week because I do have a dishwasher, but I usually just wash my dishes. I got a different dishwashing detergent, trying to find, I know you can make your own and whatever. And I definitely try to buy the non-toxic stuff, but I was thinking about the smell, and I was thinking to myself, with this new one that I ordered, how much more I enjoy washing dishes with this scent. Like, totally changed my experience.
It's an energetic thing too, right? When you have a lovely smell floating through the room that you're enjoying. I mean, this is why I love just pleasing things, beautiful things that just make me appreciate life more. And it's something as that simple.
Yeah. And I think what that's bringing me to think about is balance within the senses, right? Like, we live in a world where there's overstimulation, especially, visually, constant information. People are constantly on their phone. But I feel like there are other senses that we need to tap into to bring in a harmony or a sense of balance within our own, what am I listening to? What is the smell in my house, in my environment? How am I using nourishment to enhance balance or harmony or not in my life? I've never really thought about that in terms of balance. But like, if you ever have one of those days where you feel like all of your senses are just on, like you have a moment of awe where you're outside in the grass, and in that moment you can smell the grass, and you can, feel the dew on your toe, whatever, where it's just like everything feels activated. That's sort of a sense of balance within our sensory experience.
Yeah, or
How do
an
we
overload.
do that? How do we keep that? You know, how do we maintain that?
I guess it's not to be maintained, just like a clean kitchen isn't to be maintained. Because speaking of balance, it's like, all right, how do you be how is it that how can you be okay with just letting the dishes sit there,
Right.
having the stink of last night's food still on the stove? You know, there's beauty in that too. It's like, I just don't feel like doing that right now, and that's okay. um I don't know where I'm going with that, but when you were talking about so much sensory input, that feels like overstimulation to me. Sometimes I just don't want to give a shit about anything. I just want it to all shut down. And that's me finding balance or recalibrating, you know?
It's interesting you say that, because what came to mind for me was this one time when I did one of those float tanks, and I did not like it. It like, to me, it did the opposite of what it says. Like, oh, you're going to be in here and you're just going to be so in the void. You're just going to be floating and relaxed. But to me, that did activate everything. It like blows it up, right? It forces that internal, you know, process to come alive, where you have to look at things, because it is just quiet and void and everything. So it's almost like, but I think it's weird because, but then, you know, okay, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm seeing now. I'm changing my perspective on that. It's almost like the overstimulation of society and the going through the phone and just constantly, it's numbing, and then going into the quiet is activating, if you really stop and think about it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like finding, being okay with looking at those hard things and being activated. But, you know, I think there's a time and a space where it's okay to scroll and give yourself a minute to just decompress also.
For sure. And this is the problem when we're like, oh, we need not to scroll. We need not to do that. It's unhealthy. I mean, it's true in great volume. It is. If you're doing more of that than you are not, there's certainly a problem. But we you're right. It is a numbing out. Of course, are there things that we could do that would be more productive during that time? Absolutely. Especially if we're just wanting to shut off from ourselves, because the way I see a float tank, I've not done one, but the way I would imagine it is that you are, like you said, faced with you. And you know, there's no distraction. It
Right.
is you floating, that's it. So the phone is a distraction. Projects are distractions. The yard was a distraction for me, but it's a healthy thing. It's okay to have distractions. We need distractions. This is how we grow. This is how we build things. It's important. But yeah, so we're back to balance, right? It's finding what's most productive for you.
Yeah,
But
and
I
look,
don't think that we should shame some of the uglier things, you know, the
right.
scrolling. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. And I've certainly done way too much of it at times in my life. I'll admit that, but I'm not going to.
But also you have the self-awareness. So even when you say you've done too much of it, you probably have not done as much as if of like a lot of kids now that are just totally addicted to the phone and not able to say, okay, I'm going to put this down. It's
Right.
like, to me, it's that awareness of when you're starting to teeter too far, that we have to pull ourselves back in. And I think kids aren't being given that opportunity like we were as kids, where we had to kind of self-regulate because we didn't have the same type of distractions from technology that the kids have now. You know, I'm sure there was something, but I was outside riding around on my bike or whatever, I feel very lucky that I got to have that experience, because I don't think my life, I just think my life would have been very different with technology. And I mean, I know it's here, but there's an aspect to learning to balance and utilize it, and being able to put it down. And when you cannot ever put it down, that's when it becomes a problem. When you're not making time daily or at night, or thinking about it in terms of, how is this hurting or enhancing my life, and what can I do? What apps can I mean, I did this. I went through, where am I wasting my precious time and energy? I deleted almost every app, so I made the conscious choice to say, I'm going to stay on these platforms, and I'm going to do these things. And all these other things were really not even worth looking at or scrolling through, because it was truly distracting me from, I think there's different types of distraction. There's a
Mhm.
distraction from your purpose, your mission, your goal, your job, your living life, spending time with people, taking care of your animal, whatever it is. And then there's distraction where you are not taking care of yourself and the things around you that require your attention to function and sustain life,
Yeah.
much less
Well,
thrive.
it's such an easy escape. So then it becomes discipline just to find a healthier escape. It's like, I was talking to my daughter about this a couple of nights ago, and she realizes that she's on the phone too much, scrolling. She knows it's an issue, but she still does it. And it's like, okay, where do you draw the line? How do you find the discipline to snap yourself out of it? You have to find something else to replace it with, which, so let's just call it an addiction, just like anything else. Okay. You can't just throw it out. I mean, you can try to look at what you're trying to avoid and go into the trauma stuff and all of that. Or you could just simply say, you know what, we're going to have addictions. Let's find a healthier way. But still, there's that discipline, which is so difficult. I was really proud of her though. Her school year last year, she completely did what you did and took off all of her apps, like everything, all social media, everything. So when I would talk to her on the phone, she's like, I have never been this happy in my life. I mean, she's grown up with technology in that way. She's like, this is amazing. But here she is. So she knows, right? But she's already slipped back into it because it's hypnotic. It just like pulls you in. Anyway, I have faith that she will balance it out. She'll get sick of feeling sick about it. And that's when, kick into the next thing, whatever that next thing is.
Well, I think too, when we force ourselves to take a break, like let's say, for the next 48 hours, I'm turning off. I think if you force yourself into weekends or times where you're just completely away from it, it shifts your perspective. It's the catapult to like, wow, what was I doing? And you realize you were hypnotized, you were like suckered into this, and you're like, oh my God, but it's those opportunities or those moments where you're pulled away from it, or you put yourself in a situation to be taken out away from it, where you then can see it differently and more clearly. And then it makes it easier to implement new discipline, because you're like, this isn't what I want. I want this instead. It gives you that,
Right.
it gives you room and space to find that clarity of how you do want to spend your time in a more productive way, or not even productive, but just in a way that's meaningful and useful, You know, even if it's just sitting outside and grounding in the quiet, you know, I mean, that's it. I think that's productive, but someone might look at that and say, well, that's not productive. You know, you can,
Yeah, I
it's
liked your word, meaningful.
you know, but that's meaningful. That's healing. That's me connecting with my environment, with the world, with spirit, with life. And that's when I need, you know, like in meditation. You know, I was even thinking about this, like where I used to live, where I would meditate in my house. The freaking Wi-Fi thing, like right there. And one day I was like, oh my God, I got to turn this off when I'm meditating. And then I was like, but the house next to me has theirs on, and the house next to me has theirs on. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to go in the closet and just like, I'm going to wrap myself in tin
I
foil.
was gonna say, don't forget the tinfoil hat.
The tinfoil hat comes in handy in many ways, many reasons. And it's weird because like where I live now, I don't have all that. And I literally feel different. I feel different in my body. I don't have those same urges. You know, there's something about being in the city where you have that urge, you know, where you are blanketed with this technology. And I don't have that same desire or urge. I don't, I have, you know, I have a TV, it doesn't work. So I haven't really watched TV in years, but now I really haven't even turned it on for a movie or anything.
Well, you have such beauty out of your door, so
Right.
much. And yeah, so that's a very, very fortunate position to be in.
But, you know,
I agree with you. I mean, you're not in the middle of the rat race, you
right.
know?
And when I lived where I did, when I had that experience, there was like a hiking trail nearby. And I used to go hike a lot. So that was my time to get away from it, like almost every weekend there for many years. And then I reached that point one day where I was like, I don't need to bring my phone when I'm hiking. Then I got lost on a trail. Did I tell you this story?
No.
Oh my God. Done this. This is just how easy you can get disoriented. I had done this trail so many times. And for whatever reason, they blocked off some, like part of the trail was on road, part of the trail was on a trail, and they had blocked off some roads. And I had a water bottle with me, but I didn't have a phone. And I'm just bebopping along, and I'm like, you know, thinking about life, watching the birds. And then it hits me that I don't know where I'm at.
Oh, God.
And it was the weirdest feeling because I was like, I've done this trail a million times.
Mm-hmm.
And the trail I was doing that day that I was prepared to do was like a 4-mile trail. Well, I ended up probably walking over 14 miles to get until I finally got back to a space where I could, which was totally not where my car was and where I started. And I had to hitchhike. this lady and her grandkid picked me up. And this lady
And
was
you're like, I have no idea where to go. That's
I'm
so
like,
funny. She's driving around looking for your car.
well, so I knew the name of the park, obviously. So, and we weren't,
Oh, yeah.
we were only like 5 miles away, but like there was no other way to get there. But it was so funny because this lady was probably 90 years old and her car had the, you know, the long seat in the front because the kid who was like like a very awkward teeny bopper. Her bike was in the back, so I had to squish in the She was driving erratically, and I was like, I'm going to die. This day is just uh this day is just not my day. And but I'll never forget it. I was holding on for dear life. It was the most bizarre car ride. I've never
So what was the lesson in that? Never leave your phone, or like,
I mean, I don't know, right? It's like, God, I want to take my phone. But I think the lesson was you need to know where you are. You need to have a sense of your bearings, right? And if the road is blocked, what I should have done is turned around and backtracked instead of kept going and taking the detour in hindsight, but never would
I
I.
don't know. You have the old lady story with the bench seat. I mean,
we not,
that's pretty
not,
cool.
so it's like, also, I think don't panic, but I was getting really thirsty. I mean, it was like 100 degrees outside. It was the middle of the summer, and I was starting to get a little bit disoriented. And I was like, okay. So now when I hike, I have one of those little backpacks and I make sure I have water and, hat, whatever. It's just, yeah, it was just hilarious. It was hilarious. I'm glad I'm okay, but I could have easily, another couple of miles that day, I could have easily, passed out on the road, and who knows?
Yeah.
It's just, I'm not sure what the lesson is, except, have an element of preparedness and know your surroundings. And it's so easy to just, I think because I enjoy nature so much, I was just enjoying nature. I was wrapped up in all of that. Because the last thing I wanted to do was have my phone,
Yeah.
But now I'm like, okay, put my phone in the back and turn it off or whatever, but put it in a Faraday cage.
Gosh, how did people hike 30 years ago?
I know, right?
They knew what they were doing. They
Yeah,
had their map and
the trail map.
yeah,
Yeah.
actually use like real skills.
Mhm. Well, even now, you can download the maps even if your phone doesn't work. But if your phone dies and runs out of charge and you don't have a charger, it's like just get old school maps,
Yeah.
which I have done for driving, that I have, because I like to test myself sometimes and not use my GPS.
Yes. I think that is a great idea. As a matter of fact, I say that I'm going to do that just for the skill of that. I mean, way too reliant. So you've done it?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, I definitely do it all the time, and I've gotten lost, and then I'm like, oh my God. I did it when I was house hunting. I had another one of those experiences where I'm like, I'm going to die on this road, because I was like going to look at this house in the middle of nowhere. And I really pushed my limit, not realizing how far it was from a gas station. I was about to run out of gas and I got lost. And I'm really good with directions, actually. So this was not a normal thing for me. But again, I was like kind of winging it and not fully utilizing the GPS. And then when I needed the GPS, it wasn't on the map.
Right, right.
And I was on this gravel road that seemed like it was never going to end. And I was about to run out of gas. And I was like, great. But eventually I was like, I see a road. I'm gonna
That's talking about like stepping out of your comfort zone. I think that I haven't explored a lot around my town here, as far as on the outskirts. I think that's a great thing to do, just to push the boundaries a little bit. Just that sounds so simple. Like, why does that sound like a big deal? Just no GPS and actually just drive around and see where. I have horrible sense of direction though, really, really bad. It's like somebody says turn right, I turn left. It's weird.
But if you do it for
Like
fun,
I'm
okay, for 2 hours, I'm going to go drive around and just wherever, if I feel like turning,
right.
I'm going to turn left. Because you will discover some little hidden gem or store or
Yeah.
something when you do that. It's like, it's that whole getting off the beaten path, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Just do it with a full tank of gas.
just do it with full tank gas. Lessons learned. Yeah. And again, it's like that's part of the balance is like if you never push yourself outside of this, you know, center,
Comfort box.
if you never push yourself outside of center, then you stay in the same element of center. Whereas I feel like my center changes and my comfort level changes or what I feel is part of my core being changes when I swing the pendulum and do things off the beaten path. And then that swings back, that pendulum swings back and the center changes. What you used to say as balance changes.
Yeah, this is like helpful to me because I realize when we started, I compared feeling centered or balanced with also, it could be confused as apathy. That's something that I deal a lot with. And I do understand that it's because I'm extremely comfortable in certain situations. Like I'm peaceful. I'm good. And it's like, why would I want to rock this boat? I've got my little life going on. I'm planting this, I'm doing that. And then, I'll have a day where I'm just like, what am I doing with myself? And I realize that those times come, it's because I'm not pushing myself out of that comfort zone. But, it's like, how much do we really need to push? I think that's different for every person. But I definitely could, and I think everybody, you know, gains from being a little adventurous. But I like you talking how you talk about recentering, or as you grow, your center shifts. It was like, but here we go with the right and the left. I have such a hard time. Like this point is where I am right now. Right could be down there, left there. I don't know. I just feel like a twirling, swirling entity at all times, if that makes sense. So I feel like I am always in the center. I am the point of all of this that I'm thinking. It's always here or here. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? This
Yeah.
is why maps and directions and all of that get very twisted to me because yeah. Anyway.
I think the center's always there, but the steadiness isn't always there. Right? Like we were talking about the ball. Like it comes back to like, am I steady here in this space? What am I feeling? Am I feeling centered and strong?
Yeah, I was gonna say I like the word strong better, like strong. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's almost like it's not about the sides as it is the up and the down. Right? Like when I'm centered, I'm in flow, the up and the down moves. It doesn't matter what the wing, the wings could be, I could be flying or standing still, right? It doesn't matter what the wings are doing. My sense of flow is about the center. being steady. And if the center is steady, then I kind of, in my mind, connect that with like a straight spine, you know, with like being unwavering, no matter
Yeah.
which side comes at me, I'm steady or strong in that state of balance or harmony or whatever you want to call it. And I guess that comes back to like knowing yourself, you know, and knowing the season you're in and knowing what that is, examining that. You know, it's
And
like
knowing that you're not always going to know and being
knowing that
okay
you're
with
not always
that.
going to know. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, even the times when you get kind of the wind knocked out of you or your, you know, feet kicked out from under you, that is even in essence bringing you back to your center. Because what are you going to do? You going to lay there or are you going to stand back up? You know,
Yeah.
you're going to get back up and you're going to keep going. Because there's no other choice but to come back to that center.
Yep.
Life is always bringing you there. I guess in essence, it's like feeling at home in yourself.
Definitely. Home is where the heart is.
Home is where the heart is. It's interesting, you know, like I used to have this picture I really liked, and it was a couple hugging. And when I bought the picture, but they were standing on a ball, and they were like in a circus or something, right? Like that was the vibe of the painting. And it was very beautiful. It's like one of my favorite artists. And when I bought it, I just loved the beauty of it. And, you know, the embrace. And I was like, well, you know, I'm always thinking about how my art affects my life and my subconscious. And then, and this was like 15 years ago. Anyway, I was kind of dating a guy at the time. It was kind of a rocky situation.
Mhm.
And he kind of looked like the guy. Art. And then it occurred to me one day, it's rocky because here they are embracing on this ball that's like not steady. It's not a steady foundation, right? And I know that was in my mind, in my subconscious mind. So that relationship ended and I sold that painting because it's like I connected it with that. And that may seem silly to some people, but I mean, our environments are always influencing us as we influence it. And so,
Yeah, that's an interesting piece to have even purchased to begin with, you know, to have that piece of art. Gosh, it makes me think, well, maybe there should not be a ball. I guess when there's two people, no exercise balls for two.
right. Well, because in that case, it was like about having the foundation. I mean, maybe if both people, I mean, obviously you can extrapolate and look at this from many different angles, but in that moment in time, that did not feel steady, you know, or
Right.
secure or like a firm foundation to build upon. You know, the ball analogy kind of makes sense for building your core. But not in that setting. Wow, yeah.
Unless you're doing a circus act together, whatever, you gotta
Right.
merge as one core.
Exactly.
Anyway.
It was a circus act, but not like the good kind of circus. It was a balancing act. A lot of falling down without a net. Yeah. So balance. Yeah. And I guess ultimately we're never in balance and we're always in balance.
Yeah, there's no way to be balanced on everything. So I see it as like this, and now with circus music in my head. Da, 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 da.
I mean, I guess the key to balance is to always be examining your priorities. Because if you're just juggling a bunch of stuff that means nothing to you and the life you want to live, and you're just adding balls in the air and you're just like, doo-doo, it's going to come
Mhm.
crashing down. But if you're like, these are my priorities, and you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, the more clear we are about who we are, what we want, how we want to spend our time, how we want to move through our day, the less we clutter up our lives with things that distract us and bring us off of that equilibrium. You know, when we live more consciously with how we're,
Yeah, it boils down to self-awareness, self-awareness and self-acceptance, but also being willing to self-correct.
Mhm.
But it goes, it's consciousness, it's being aware of yourself. That's it.
In a
Um,
nutshell, all the world's problems right there. Yeah,
uh,
I said in a nutshell.
yeah, I mean, so the question is, how do you help people? I mean, if you're on a mission to help, how do you help people become self-aware? Sometimes when talking to people, I find it unbelievable that they're not looking at the most obvious things.
Mhm.
It's just wild. And there's not a key that you can turn that makes them realize that they have to figure that out for themselves. It's crazy.
Well, I think the one adjunct to that is yes, we have to figure it out ourselves, but we all have blind spots, which is why it's important to do things like this, because so many times in my life, I've heard a conversation or watched something or whatever, and then I'm like, oh my God, I do that, or that's me, right? Like it's finding, I mean, that's the point in helping others in essence, is like helping people find those blind spots. And are you open to seeing it? Are you open to see what your blind spots are? Because we all have them and we'll always have them, which is in essence one of the reasons we need each other, because we all have different unique strengths and weaknesses. So in order to have balance, it's not just an internal state or an individual state. You know, it goes deeper than that. You know, how we balance with the world, with relationships, with the things around us that are reflecting back to us, things that we either are choosing to see or not to see or can't see.
Yeah, it's so true. Because when I'm alone, which is a lot of the time, everything's perfectly balanced. It's going out and letting other people in, or then dealing with, something that happens with one of the kids, or that's where I get like, whoa, oh, I was doing so well before. It's like life naturally throws obstacles or, weights, more balls. Balance. Balance is easy if it's just you, but then there's no growth in that. So
I mean, I think there's growth in it, but it's not meant to be a permanent state.
yeah, I agree.
You know, it's because I know, I know people that can't be alone and feel it with something 24/7, and they need to be alone. You know, it's like
Yeah. Go
just like
take
I
some
need
time.
just like I need to not be alone. You know, it's like I'm the opposite of them, and it's
Mhm.
like witnessing those extremes, and I think because of, the scrolling and the technology and the things that we've witnessed in the past 3 years, it gets harder and harder to remember how to be in community and in conversation and with other people in a way that's, you know, conscious and real, and from a place that's, you know, kind of wanting to be in service to a greater divine purpose in our collective connection, you know, with one another. Because we do need each other.
Yeah. That we do.
Unfortunately.
Oh, that's funny.
'Cause sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna stay at home with my dog and my cat, you know, like, and then I'm like, oh, I need to go out into the world. And,
It is so much easier to stay at home. But what do you think about the time?
well, it's funny you say that because I did not look at the clock when we started, so I'm guessing it's been an hour.
Yeah, I see that I'm needed. So
Okay. Well, this has been fun. And yeah, so we'll pull another topic out of a hat sometime soon.
yeah,
And
yeah, really soon. And whether we use this or not, I don't know, but it's a great practice and it's fun.
yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Enjoyed it. All right, I'll talk to you on the flip side.
All right, bye.
Bye.